Right, good evening. We want to welcome everybody to our regular board meeting. Good evening. We'll call this meeting to order. And we'll start with our pledge of allegiance. Everyone please rise and join. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next up, we'll have our roll call attendance. Madam Clerk. Director Ray.
Right here.
Director Kelly. She should be joining us on Zoom shortly. Director Kingman.
Here.
President Levesque. Here. Director Knapp. Here. Student Advisor Schroeder.
Here.
Student Advisor LeBon. She's not here yet. Superintendent Sweeting. Here. Right, thank you, Madam Clerk. Next up, we'll have our approval of the agenda. Would anyone like to make any changes to the agenda this evening? We have a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Make a motion, we approve the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. Madam Clerk. Director Ray.
Aye.
Director Kingman.
Aye.
President Levesque. Aye. Director Knapp. Aye. Next up is our approval of the minutes from February 13th. Do we have any changes to the minutes, or is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve minutes February 13th, 23.
I'll second. Been moved and seconded to approve the regular meeting minutes from February 13th. Madam Clerk. Director Ray.
Aye.
Director Kingman.
Aye.
President Levesque. Aye. Director Knapp. Aye. And next we would have our public comments portion. Is there anyone signed up to speak? Or in no one signed up to speak this evening? Anyone in the audience? All right, we'll move right into our consent agenda, which consists of our budget and enrollment report, personnel report, warrants, adjusted warrants, Stillaguamish Tribe of Indians Community Grant contribution to Apple Preschool, Outdoor Schools of Washington grant funding update, overnight trip to the state tournament for the boys and girls basketball, or out of state travel for Rachel Harrington to Space Symposium, interlocal agreement with Snohomish County for Student Support Advocate Program, contract amendment for Snohomish County Human Services, and affiliation agreement with Texas Tech University Health Science Center, and a contract for Weston High School HVAC improvement, and the contract for heating, ventilation, air conditioning control systems at Eagle Creek, Kent Prairie, and Weston. Does anybody want to pull anything?
Question. Who's paying for our Harrington to go to Colorado Springs?
Does it sound like you want to pull that and talk about it? Because it's,
Okay,
we could pull that one,
if that's how it works.
that, yeah. And then if there's anything else anyone else would like to pull. And then we can move that into new business, Debbie, if you can manage. I have to do some things, but it'll be fine. So then do we have a motion to adopt the consent agenda with the I moved down into new business? Make a motion to approve the consent.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda revised. Madam Clerk. Director Ray.
Aye.
Director Kingman.
Aye.
President Levesque. Aye. Director Knapp. Aye. Can we put I at the end? Oh, it's all good. It's good stuff. Okay.
I can share what I know on that. It also, I was gonna, in the board plate, it lists the actual costs, but Rachel is receiving an award from the Space Center, and they are paying for the majority of it. She'll get reimbursed for what she's paying for, but she's also, there's going to be a combination of professional development funds that are being used as well. So that
Astronauts Memorial Foundation.
Yes,
She's being recognized because of what she's done for the Mars program.
yes, yes. And it says like go right in here and it says, so the registration, the airfare. And all the other expenses, the total, I believe. The profession, all will be reimbursed to her. I believe she's paying for it upfront, and then except for the PV funds, so that'll come from the district, from the PV funds that she has access to. $1,369.52.
Thank you for that.
Sure. She also said that in our, in the little summary that's next to that item, it says the budgetary impact. And it goes through which things and a part of which things is paying for what. So can we have that on the agenda now? Okay. So part of our new business, we'll talk about the out-of-state travel for Rachel Harrington's Space Symposium. And do we have a motion to approve that out-of-state travel as presented?
I move we approve the out-of-state travel.
Second.
Harrington.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the out-of-state travel. Madam Clerk. Director Ray.
Aye.
Director Kingman.
Aye.
President Levesque. Aye. Director Now. Aye. Okay, next up, we'll have our financial highlights of our current budget. Well, this will be presented by Gina Zuzenhorst, our Executive Director of Financial Services. Good evening.
Good evening. There we go. Get it to go to slideshow because the thing is blocking. Well,
I can see
it like it is. All right, so financial highlights of current budget. We are through the month of January, so that is the area that we're coming from when we're talking about this month's financial highlights of current budget. And we always start with the positives. So for 22-23, the financial health of the district, the strong points, we had a healthy beginning fund balance, and that helps sustain our operations this year. We have our 4-year educational programs and operations levy. 22-23 is the 3rd year of the 4-year levy on that. We have federal funds that are unique, additional year from Department of Health for Learn to Return funding, $404,000. We have our capital levy as well. 22-23 is the 3rd year of the 4-year levy for our capital levy. So those are our financial positives in summary. Our challenges, we've got a spend down of our fund balance. It has supported programs and services through some very challenging times. This past few years, it's been resulting in a declining ending fund balance trend compared to previous years, where our budget estimates that ending fund balance to come in at 4.2 million. We think it'll probably be higher than that, but that was what our budget forecast would have showed for that first year there. Enrollment is recovering more slowly than hoped. We have 54 FTE full-time equivalent less than budgeted for 22-23. That equals about 570,000 less in state apportionment than we would have planned for. And that is reflected in our January apportionment statement, but they will spread the impact of that out over the next months of the year. Our federal pandemic relief funds have been exhausted, so that's something that we're continuing to include in our talking points when we go out and communicate with the community and with our staff at staff meetings in the buildings as we're talking about these issues. We continue to have certain programs with unique needs where the revenues that are generated by funding models that go with that are not sufficient. So it's the state is continuing to underfund the program, especially for special education. And I always like to be very careful when I talk about that, because I don't mean it to sound as if that program is a burden. And we do believe that the special education students or special needs students that we serve are part of the learning community, and we need to be meeting their needs as is required by their individual education plans, but also because it's the right thing to do. And we continue to hear that the legislative talking advocacy that this is an area the state continues to not be providing funds, and it's their obligation to do so. And highlighting that it's the state constitution that it's the paramount duty for the legislature to fund, provide ample funds for education. And special education is no exception to that. So it's continued to be a pressure point for us and for other districts as well. We're continuing to recover from the impacts of the pandemic. We have state funding models that were reformulated by the McCleary decision back in 2018 that are continuing to lead to funding gaps, and that is coming to a head here. And we're preparing for future reductions to be enacted for the 23-24 fiscal year. Those are our financial challenges. Here's the updated picture of our fund balance trend and how it is moving along in the line for the months. And you can see that lower navy blue line, the lowest one on the chart, that is the current fiscal year. And we have that clocked in for January at 5.3 million. And it is continuing to follow the typical trend that it would follow from month to month to month. But we are estimating that we're going to end the fiscal year at somewhere between 4 and 6 million. So a bit about our enrollment and how that is recovering more slowly than hoped. And because enrollment drives the majority of our state funding, it is extremely important for our financial picture. So for 22-23, we have a net increase of 84 students since 2016-17. If you look at that chart across 6 years, it's increased by 84 students. And for 22-23, we had budgeted to come in with 5,427 students. And what we actually have is about 54 students less than that. So I had just talked about that in the previous slide, how that results in about $570,000 less than we had planned for state revenues there. And also just to remember and to point out that we make our staffing plans based on the enrollment that we had approved. So we did staff at the budget level of enrollment, which would have been the 5,427 number. That's just a reminder that connection exists. And our student full-time equivalent for 23-24 that was approved by the board in January that we're working on our next projections for, those numbers is 5,374, pretty close to what we currently have. Very flat on enrollment. We do hope that we recover more students. More students will come to us in next year in the fall, but we are not going to be planning on that for certain in our projections and our numbers. And a kind of a similar picture just to show when we are talking about how we've provided higher levels of staffing and services. We showed that we had an increase of 84 students just across the continuum of 6 years. And that if you look at the similar picture for staffing across those same 6 years, it shows that we've increased in total staff by about 98. So just the starkness of the picture that creates. If you don't include this number right here, it's about 76. But that's still compared to 84, not necessarily in alignment. Now, not all staff that is that we have is totally aligned with exactly enrollment. Not all things are driven exactly by that. Also would represent how our K-3 ratio obligation around staffing for the kindergarten through 3rd grade classrooms. We have to maintain 17 as our average. So with that, that would have resulted and did result in additional staff at the K-3 level back when that requirement went into effect. I believe it was 2018-19 or 2019-20, I can't remember which. But there are multiple other things like that, similar other reasons that would drive why our staffing has increased for different reasons. But not to get into those, other than the point is just to show that we have maintained a higher level of services and staffing across the years compared to our enrollment. And I've been showing this chart as on the continuum, the forecast, and talking about how we're going to need to be reducing by $5 million, and it could be 5 million plus. And so we are working on those figures. The reduction target will be greater when we adjust the revenue forecast using the new enrollment projection. So I'll be coming back to you with those figures at some point. But again, these are high level. Out years are just super high level figures. We don't have the detailed tools or the actual detail that makes up all that number and the out years. And a lot of things could be changed at the legislative level that will affect things as well. We've talked about this over the months, just showing that potential forecast and what it does to our minimum fund balance compared to a target minimum fund balance that was adjusted, like if the potential adjusted minimum fund balance was changed, and we would be closer to that policy under this figure, assuming we had our reduced educational programs and services plan implementation for 23-24, and that with the budget reductions. So for 23-24, that would mean if a new policy was less of fund balance, that we would be pretty close to it. That's not saying we're recommending we're doing exactly that, but just gives you the context of where we're at least with the first numbers. So we've already talked about these challenging circumstances. And on the heels of the pandemic, that it was discussed at that time that the board had recommended that we go ahead and utilize our fund balance as a rainy day fund to go ahead and dip into that in order to not have to be making significant reductions in the staff, and with the students and staff still being extremely fragile coming out of the pandemic. And so that choice was made, and we're moving forward, just remembering also that we have the values that guide budget decisions, and it talks about our fund balance and being able to also utilize that in times of emergency, the flexibility there. Minimum fund balance, our board policy requires minimum fund balance equal to 1 month's average operating costs. And I think we're all familiar with hearing that. But that means that we would need to land with an ending fund balance around the $8 million range. If we contemplate changing board policy from 1 month's average operating costs, which is roughly an 8% of total expenditures, to one that is 5%, it would mean our target ending fund balance would be in the range of 4.8 to 5 million. Here's one more scenario. If we were to contemplate changing our minimum fund balance from 1 month's average operating to roughly 6% of operating expenditures, it would put our targeted ending fund balance roughly in the range of 5.7 to 5.8 million. And when we place that up next to some of the targets of what it looks like we might be landing for just those big rough numbers that we originally had to start with, we would be that much under our minimum fund balance. That line in the red down at the bottom, we'd be about 1.4 million for 23-24 is what I'm looking at, underneath the targeted minimum fund balance of 5.6. So that just gives you a picture of if we were to contemplate changing the board policy. That's the numbers that it generates. Something I wanted to mention about that as well. It could be a temporary change to fund balance policy or a documented plan to get back up to our regular policy without making a change to that policy. Maybe by the end of 3 years' time, or no change to fund balance policy, just having that documented plan to get back to the minimum. So there's some different options that we can consider and continue to talk about with regard to minimum fund balance, but also keeping in mind the purpose of having that in the first place and what is a good, healthy amount to be at. For example, 1 month's payroll alone is about $6 million. So something to think about. Continuing on about what could change the picture, revenues. On the revenue side, the legislative action, regionalization rebase. We've talked about that before. We're at 15%. And we're watching the bills that are formulating around out there about how they might go about making some changes there. We're hoping that increase for SPED funding is going to help. But it seems like that's going at an incremental pace, not a large fix. We've asked for the state superintendent has put forth a large need for special education to make sure that they know that this is our needs. And the legislature has made some changes over the years, incremental changes, and we're thankful for that. But we're still reading and hoping and tracking on those bills to see what they're gonna do for that. They may increase increase the cap, which would be helpful. But a cap, period, is not a good plan for the needs of special education program students. And then enrollment uncertainty, our enrollment may increase. We may have more than we had planned. And that will be beneficial for our financial picture. But certainly if they all come in one grade, we'll be hiring more teachers. So there's that to think about, but additional enrollment does help with the financial picture. And then on the cost side, there's some things that are currently not in our control as far as what the state adopts and how they promulgate whatever cost inflator rate we're going to have to utilize in our budgets. I'm hearing all kinds of numbers. The latest I'm hearing is 3.8, 3.6, 3.8, but we still don't know for sure. We are continuing to have very careful spending in 22-23. That's right now happening. We are visiting with staff all throughout the district at each building and each department, talking about what kind of situation we're experiencing this year, so they have an understanding, a window into our financial picture and what's been going on, and why we're needing to embark on this plan to make some reductions now, and what the benefit was for all involved, students and staff all across the district, for maintaining our programs at the level that they were maintained just off the heels of the pandemic, just discussing what's going on with state funding and all the factors. And I think that also helps with all of the understanding around careful spending this year, because if they know about it now, then it's helpful for whatever decisions or asks or needs they may be experiencing now to make those careful judgments. And then just the outcomes of our future salary negotiations as well would change the picture and influence the picture. And I think I kind of already talked about this, laying the plans for the future. The budget advisory task force meetings are underway. We've been meeting with that group since November. We have had one budget forum meeting at the BPAC in January. We have a budget forum meeting tomorrow at Post Middle School, 6 to 7:30. And we'll have another one at Eagle Creek on April 11. And like I said, we've been going out key messages about the budget for staff meetings. We've been having everybody do these feedback activities, worries, values, priorities, hopes, and ideas, and sharing those, putting those down. And we're evaluating all of that information. Chris is working through those. And we're working on developing a budget survey for the community. We're tracking on what's going on at the legislative session. They will conclude in April. But again, that challenge with them concluding in April is that we need to make collective actions prior to that for reductions. And those would need to occur by April 24 or May 8. And as we get further into this process, we're quickly coming to the conclusion that April 24 and May 8 is even late for having to try to get the notifications out to the people and the decisions and things that need to be made. So it could be that we come earlier than that so that communications down the line can occur, but the board needs to be upfront. And again, that is because we back everything up from that May 15 deadline that we're required by law and by our bargaining agreements to notify certificated staff if they are continuing on or if they do not have a spot. So I believe that's it. And now, for the questions.
I got several, but I don't need to go first.
Sherry's joined us on Zoom. Maybe Sherry, do you have any questions for Gina? Can you hear us? Maybe she can't hear us. Kyle, do you have any questions about the budget yet?
So far, no questions from me.
All right, Director
Go
Knapp.
down the line.
Yeah.
I'm curious because I'm not part of the budget task force, so I was wondering if or anything going on. Yeah, exactly. How's the process going with that?
Yeah. Well, first I'll say that we've been posting all of our presentations on the district's website. So all the, what we've been working through is available for people to look at them. A lot has been invested with taking them through district finances so that there's an understanding of district finances, revenues and expenditures and what's driving our funding deeper than we have been able to, you know, with our condensed amount of time that we have with staff meetings to just give the snippets. We've been working through that just to build their knowledge. We've been exploring outwards of that to start bumping up to more of the process around how do we start distilling things down to where would we be able to quantify how much funds have reduced and where. And there's some themes that have come out from their work as well. They've been doing the feedback activity of the what are your hopes, what are your values, what are your worries? They've done that as well. So some common themes I think we'll see coming out. We're still trying to get all of that and categorize them. Other than that, maybe I would toss it back to you, Chris.
Yeah,
Do you have?
I'd say it's a really processing think tank, and because of the membership, it's become very valuable in that we have people that have experiences from all kinds of perspectives, and they're learning a lot from those that have gone before us and done it, even in the business world where they've described what's happened there. But it's been they've learned a lot about, you know, public school financing, and that's been a big part of it. And they are synthesizing that information, and we're getting closer to like creating the clustering of these are the areas. We have ideas about that, but we're not quite there yet. They will be instrumental next week in creating the final draft of the survey that will go out. They reviewed it last time, and next week they will finalize it, and then it'll go out the next day. And so,
Thank you. Great question. Director Kelly, can you hear us?
I can. I'm sorry. I was having technological difficulties and was rescued by my 23-year-old daughter. I was reading through what Gina had presented. So it's just, yes, it's kind of the, a continued version of where we stand. And not great news. I do know, just even from talking with people this weekend, we are not alone. So some comfort in that, but some big, hard decisions coming our way. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Kelly. Dr. Ray, we have some questions.
I got a few written down here. I will send an email with these questions. And if you can just respond back to the board, because I don't necessarily expect you to have these answers right now. So no particular order. But I was just going to summarize them for the board since we're in this presentation, you talked about wanting to reduce the minimum fund balance to 6%.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
well, it was an idea. It showed 5, did you show 5% and then some?
5,
percent?
6.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like
Just a middle ground
understood,
idea.
right? But that's your presentation, right? I mean, you proposed that you would like to see that number.
We're not recommending.
I may have misunderstood about
Okay,
proposing it versus showing
Showing what it
what it
looked
would look like.
is that in preparation of proposing a change?
Perhaps, I haven't
Okay,
decided
so
yet.
I'm sure it is. So I'll just continue on.
Okay.
Could you run numbers of our budget, previous budget, so starting with 1920, last couple of years pre-pandemic, with that 6% number that is in the presentation, to show us where we would be now with that number, like how would we have, and essentially, how would we have gotten through this pandemic? What would it look like had we ran a minimum balance of that 6% instead of the 1 month operating cost?
Okay,
And then,
yes. I can, but I might be able to say it. I don't think it would have changed anything. Am I right? I don't know. We'll think that through.
I'll query that. What I'm looking for is the minimum, like, you're gonna change what we actually had of 12 million to what that 6% number is. So had we kept the minimum fund balance at 6%, so I'm guessing that's somewhere around maybe $6 or $7 million instead of at one point there was around 12 million in there. So what does that project out?
Well, there still is, the amounts will be the same. It's just what our fund balance policy says. So the amounts are the same. The amounts are 10 million, 12 million.
No, but what I'm asking is, so we're looking to maintain a minimum. So I was obviously involved with the district, as many of us were back when there was no fund balance.
Mhm.
So my thought process is that if the minimum fund balance is 6% of operating costs, so some number, whatever that number
With
is.
some
X,
flexibility, maybe.
Understood. Certainly it could be more, certainly it could be less, but that number. And then my assumption would be that we would have had a minimum fund balance closer to that 6%, which is probably not as large as $12 million. In that early
I'm a
pre-pandemic
little
time.
confused.
You confused? Okay.
I'm confused by what your question is. Are you asking if we would have had less money? Or are you asking if we would have had the same amount of money, but just a different number for the minimum fund balance?
Right, so we're currently carrying a minimum fund balance of 1 month operating costs, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
That's. on
which
the-
is larger than 6%.
Well, we've been above the 1 month's operating costs.
Understood, thankfully.
Right.
But what if we weren't above?
We won't be at the end of the year.
Understood. What if we weren't 3 years ago? What if we were at that minimum fund balance that we're proposing to have?
We would have had to make
Way down.
reductions.
How would it
years
weigh down?
back. We would have had to reduce.
That's my,
earlier.
that,
I
that's,
get that, okay, right, yeah.
yes, I'm fully aware that we would have to.
Right.
Could you run those numbers as if to see what that would look like? With
See
the
how
thought,
far we would have been hurt.
correct.
I get it, okay.
That way, so if we do have a lower fund balance, how are we more prepared to
Meet the next.
meet the
emergency.
next emergency? Is that,
I get. you.
that's my point.
No, that makes sense.
I am not in favor of having less of a fund balance than we currently have.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
Because we were able to weather the storm, but
Yeah.
if if there are numbers that show that we would have weathered the storm just as well, because my assumption is that we will be near that minimum fund balance. I mean, that's where we want to
Yeah.
be as
And there
as
would
a
be-
district.
Yeah, and then the ESSER funds definitely help in the west.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so there's
sure.
other factors there too. Yeah.
Hopefully I'll word it a little bit better in the, so we just have
Yeah.
a better documentation program.
Yeah, and
Okay.
then I think I get that too, because there may not be a need to permanently change the fund balance policy. It may be that it stays where it's at,
Sure.
but we define then
Sure,
we're okay at this and this, but by here,
Sure.
we need to be back to
sure.
the 8. We've documented it all along, the plans and around that
Yeah,
as to why we did what we did, and then we'll come back to, and
Yeah.
that's perfectly acceptable as well. It'll just play out
sure.
for what we have as available resources in the
Excellent.
short term, next few years.
Excellent. Easier ones, follow up. And then could you, since the number 6% was in the proposal, but whatever, it doesn't matter, but just, could you poll and present back to us, maybe you already have and it's in here, or just point me to where it is. What do our closest, say, 6 or 7 surrounding school districts do?
Can do, I have reports probably already that can give to you on
Awesome.
that are prepared.
Yeah, are they 1 month, are they 5%, or where they're awesome?
Yeah.
Could you also let us know what encumbrances we might have, but that's the right word, we might have in our CBAs that are already agreed upon for the coming years? Certainly, I saw the proposal for next year in there,
Mhm.
was it 3%? But are there other ones that aren't in the presentation? Do we have any CBAs that are already signed, sealed, delivered for the following years, and what are those numbers?
Yeah.
Excellent. And then,
Sort of. I don't know if I can extrapolate them accurately yet into future forecasts.
but I mean, they're in the CBA, right? Doesn't it say that it's
The amounts that we
it's
have. yeah.
IPD plus whatever the number is? Yeah.
We are in renegotiations right now with PSC
Sure,
for
yeah.
that, and then AEA, we will, they have another year.
Yeah,
So we'll put down what that is, and then we have AAA.
yeah. And of course,
Okay.
and then when understand the legislator does IPD
Yeah,
and said,
They're calling it inflationary factor now.
and okay, IF, whatever you want to call it now. Yeah, yeah,
If.
yeah. Is there a way to better, I'm scanning their website and it's not the easiest. Is there a way to better project out what might be more of a reality than what they're showing there? Or is that like historically, it's just so across the board, there's no way to do that?
They are, there is a bill though, there is a bill down in Olympia right now that is to propose that for inflationary factor,
Mhm.
that we would know it 6 months in
Okay.
advance for planning purposes, because they too they say this is hard. We have to do our budget and we don't know. So there is a bill, and I don't know the bill number offhand. I don't know if Sherry knows that, but it talks about that, to know 6 months ahead that we know.
Okay, great.
this. But I know that you're hearing more of a common message now from various people,
Right,
that it's where it's gonna probably land, like 3.8 to 4.0 for next year and 3.6 to 4.0 the following year.
and then, right, and then how does, I guess maybe a quick refresher. How does that affect our bottom line numbers? Because the IPD is partly funded by the state,
partly, but not 100%.
right? And then, so I guess,
Add that to the average salary
okay,
that they pass on
Which
based on the prototypical school
Right.
model, so enrollment
Sure.
times factors equals this many
Right.
staff.
Right.
Times an average salary,
Right,
that average salary is increased by the 3.8 or whatever.
Whatever the number is, right.
Value they use.
yeah,
That's how it passes through to us. And there's constraints around the obligation to utilize that in support of salaries.
could you punch in the old computer there and punch out numbers showing whatever we're hearing is maybe a best guess and a pretty conservative guess, and maybe plug in 3.8 or 4% and see
Well,
what that might change it?
Well, I want to say something that
Okay.
this is a time consuming thing, because right now, I know Gina, we've been working
Well,
with
HR,
HR.
Okay,
What you have to do is you have to do that. It's not, you have to know where every staff member is and where they're going to be on
Okay.
the salary
Sure.
scale next year. So if they've earned any credits this year or any degrees, and there's this thing. So we've been plugging that in, but we're still not even there. So we're we can do that, but it's time consuming. 'Cause
Sure,
we're
they're
waiting to
working
get
on it,
that.
and I had HR start on something, and now I'm gonna have to dial them back and have them use a different rate.
Yeah,
But they
we
have to
started on it.
redo everything,
okay,
yeah.
sure. I don't want to be too time consuming. I'm okay with if we've used 2%, I'm okay just doubling that number. Understand it won't be accurate, but it'll be
Yeah.
a good representation of what that might look like.
Yeah,
And so what that
Big
impact
picture.
might be, because
Yeah.
that will be an impact of that, yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
So just a little, yeah, more detailed, more depth sooner.
always.
Crystal ball, please.
Always.
Those are my questions. I'll formulate a little bit better.
No, you did good, that's good.
But to summarize that on here and all
Ready
that.
to do.
Okay. Thank you.
Good questions. I wanted to piggyback off of one of Director Ray's questions when you're talking about when we give increases to the staff and the state gives an average. Can you estimate how many people are above average in our district? Is it a lot of them that are above average?
2/3.
2/3. Okay. That's a good question. Good answer. Okay.
And I actually knew it.
Good job.
Director Kingman, I'm hoping that you have a good question also, but you don't
What?
have to have three. It's not a requirement.
Well, the only other thing that came to my mind is the surprising fact that staffing is outpacing students.
Yeah.
Can HR answer who those people are? I'm guessing they're not all teachers.
Correct, and I'll just give you some examples. I mean, I think I kind of did a little bit with the K3 ratio where, we have special grants that we've received as well that would have generated additional positions. So they would not have been tied to enrollment. And those are in those numbers.
Those grants temporary.
Some of them are continuing. Mhm.
Like our student support advocates and
Mhm.
our.
But also, if we look at our special education enrollment, and the needs there, that would also generate additional, staffing, which would not necessarily be evident in our enrollment figures because, we increased in special education staff as a percentage of the whole.
Did the special education student body increase commensurate?
Sometimes yes, because some of them need one-on-ones. So we would have had some students that need one-on-one paraeducator assistance. So we would increase, let's say it's a new student that comes to the district or grows up in our district, comes to us, presents with these needs, individual education plan. They need a paraeducator to be with them. There's another staff person added, but we don't have a lot of more enrollment to show for that. It's 1 and 1. So that can happen too.
Can I ask another question to follow up on that?
Yeah.
What's the percentage of special ed students in our district? I know there's
I think it's about 14.58.
we have nine.
I'm looking at some of these
Did the
things.
definition of special ed change, or did the society all of a sudden change? What caused that increase? Do you know?
That's what the researchers are working on heavily. So I don't have that answer. Certainly, I have opinions and opposite ideas of that would argue against one opinion versus the other. But yes, no, I think it's just society that as it is today. I don't think it's,
We're not alone in it. There is not one district that I heard that was in a meeting yesterday in my morning meeting that has less. Well, the state cap is 13.6, so the state will pay an extra additional apportionment or allocation for our special ed students up to 13.6%. Everybody that in this meeting, there was probably about 20 or 30 districts represented. And they were all above, almost close 15 or above %. And thus advocating for the state to not have a cap or to have the cap increased.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Any questions, bring more questions to your mind. Okay. Thank you very much, Gina. And thank you for all your work with all of the budget forums and budget committees and budget task force and all the budgets. We appreciate all your work. Thank you. Next up, we'll have a presentation from Brian Lewis, our Executive Director of Operations, about Eagle Creek portables. Got a proposal that was interesting.
Hey, good evening, directors. I am also here to speak with you about the future. We're going to bring to you tonight a proposal to purchase 2 portable classroom buildings to be installed at Eagle Creek Elementary School. I'm going to show you the proposal as it sits at this moment. Want you to, I want to pass on to you that this is not a complete cost analysis at this time. What we are looking for is authority to issue a purchase order to the vendor that I'm going to propose in just a moment to purchase these portables. We give them a purchase order now, we'll get in the queue for delivery of these portables in the last 2 weeks of July. I'm going to talk with you about the rationale, why we're proposing this now, the source of funds and the timeline. So on your screens, you should be able to see, or on this screen, these are 2 proposals, one from Modern Building Systems, one from Pacific Mobile Structures. These are both portable building or modular building constructors. They build these in a factory. Interestingly enough, they're both in Salem, Oregon. They're about 10 miles from one another. And that's where the vast majority of portable structures in the Pacific Northwest come from. One is for $532,237,000. One is for $567,804. These are functionally the same building. They come equipped with bathrooms in between them, 2 stalls. Then they also have sinks in the classrooms, so that these would be called what we would call wet portables because they have water and sanitary sewer provided inside. What we would suggest is that we go with the purchase from Pacific Mobile Structures. These are both bid through the KCDA contract, so they both meet the bid requirements for the state. They're also Pacific Mobile Structures. We have 2 of these portables at Camp Prairie right now. We've had a very positive experience with them, both in terms of the on-time delivery and the durability of the structures as they build. So that's the proposal is to purchase from Pacific Mobile Structures. Just wanted to show you the 2 different bids so you can see what the difference was between the 2. Again, issue a purchase order in February. That will be tomorrow. February ends after that. 2 portable classroom buildings from Pacific Mobile Structures and installed at Eagle Creek Elementary for use by September 2023. Here it is. Okay, so this is from an extract, a page from portable classroom feasibility study that we commissioned McGranahan to conduct for us in January 2021. We had this study performed at all 4 of our elementary sites to help us identify the preferred placements of portable buildings if we needed to purchase them in the future. And the placements for Eagle Creek here are shown in order A, B, and C, with A being the preferred location and B and C being alternate locations. The reason why A is the preferred location is the proximity to electrical and sanitary sewer services. The B and C locations would require much more extensive excavation closer to the building, and it requires to install a pump instead of a gravity feed for the sewer services. We'd also have to displace the one or both of the existing portables that are currently on the site. Along with this comes a potential for some minor site redevelopment, extending the queuing lane that we've got in place right now. At the site, they call it the ferry system, where 2 lanes, 1 lane becomes 2, and then becomes 1 again as the cars enter the site. We're employing a similar model at Kent Prairie Elementary when we get the queuing lane built there. So this would help alleviate some pressure on the site at drop off time. The primary reason for proposing this now is because the enrollment at Eagle Creek is equivalent to what the enrollment was at Kent Prairie when we placed portable buildings there in 2018. We do expect, we do have budgeted a small increase in enrollment at Eagle Creek in 2023-24. And there's currently a 115 unit townhome development under construction. It's called within the tenants boundaries of Eagle Creek. There's also an apartment building on Olympic Avenue. It's also under construction right now within the tenants area for Eagle Creek. Though the combination of these two, the apartments are generally don't provide as many students to us as single family homes. Townhomes fits within that definition of single family homes. So 115 townhomes would generate a little over 44 students for the district. 64 students, pardon me. If you go down to the Gilman Walk, which is the name of the development, all those existing structures are sold. They've got 8 under construction right now that are sold, and they're about halfway done with the development. So it seems pretty clear to us that this building, this development is going to complete and provide additional students to Eagle Creek Elementary. Right now, Eagle Creek Elementary is bursting at the seams. They've got pull-out areas in the pods right now where they're conducting instruction inside of the pods. Adding 4 classrooms to the site would alleviate some of the pressure that they're experiencing right now and provide some additional room into the future. This is a real luxury for us in that we've got access to impact fees to help us to support this purchase and give us time to plan for it instead of having the building feel pain, so to speak, from being overcrowded before we could respond. So the source of funds to cover this, it's impact fees. In August of 22, you approved a capital facilities plan. Within that capital facilities plan is a description of planned improvements. District plans to add portable facilities at the elementary level and potentially at other levels during the 6-year planning period for the capital facilities plan. The cost estimate that we had at the time was about $1.8 million, paid for out of a combination of bonds and other local funds and impact fees. This project is not going to cost $1.8 million, but it's going to be fairly close. These impact fees can only be used for growth-related projects, and they do have an expiration date on them of 8 years. We're gonna be bumping up on 6 years of some of the impact fees that we've already collected. So we do have another impetus to spend those monies at this time. Currently, we got about $1,021,142 in the capital projects fund generated from impact fees. We would need to contribute an additional $176,000 out of state timber money, which is also held in the capital projects fund right now. And that would cover the cost of the portables with tax, site prep, mechanical and electrical construction, design and contingency cost. This would, the site prep also include excavation, replacement of portables, creation of additional stormwater management structures underground, which you wouldn't see, but they would be there. And then we've got 80,000 set aside for furniture. The plan at this point would be to excavate the areas for the placement of the portables instead of placing them above ground. A couple of advantages for us in that if we follow that method is that we don't have to buy ramps, aluminum ramps. And those aluminum ramps can be anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 per building, depending on how high the site is. If you look at the ramps at Kent Prairie, the one closer to the road, it's about 20 and further away from the placement of the ramps also, or not using ramps, would also provide greater access to the site. Even though we've got ramps, it's much easier for a person with mobility issues to enter a building if it's closer to the ground, if it's elevated. So that's our proposal for placement at that site. It would be different from KP, but it's a more of a lesson learned from the KP experience. So approval of issuance of a purchase order would allow us to order the portables, get our line in the queue, and plan on delivery in the last 2 weeks of July. We would begin site work in June of 2023 with a targeted completion in the last week of August of 2023. That means furnishings in the building ready for teachers to occupy. Thanks for your time. If you have to answer any questions you might have. Yes, ma'am.
I have like 4 questions.
Same.
Okay. I only have one. Okay, sorry, Ryan. What age groups would be going into these portables since they're a little bit farther away from the main building? Would it be probably 5th grade?
So some of that is depending on the programming choices that the building administration will make. At Kent Prairie, they did place the 5th grade classes inside of portables, but at Eagle Creek, there's a little bit different situation happening. We've got the EBD program at the site, which does not have water or sewer to their portables. And with the potential relaxation of isolation and restraint rules, we may not need to have quiet rooms, timeout rooms inside of the spaces where those students are served. And that may influence what will happen inside of those buildings and programming. So it's not settled yet.
Next, how would you keep those portables secure? Would you have to install some kind of fencing
Yeah.
around the side, like everywhere else? And is that in the cost?
Yes. So you can see that there would be a new fence and gate installed immediately to the west or east, excuse me. I think that's what direction this is, but
Might need a
Oh,
bigger-
Here, you
That's- yeah, that's more
There you
detail.
go. There you go.
So like,
away from
like
the
here?
campus to the edge of the
Yeah, you
site.
can see right here, and then it goes right there.
so the lines to look at. So the one coming down below the bottom A building, that dotted.
Right here,
Okay.
yeah. And we've got some fencing in here, but right now, there's gaps, and this was actually gonna be in my longer term plan was to improve the fencing at this site in particular, because it's very open. this backspace, this back part of the building is open. So this would help us make this place, this site more secure.
Only 3 more questions. I'm sorry, Brian. How much extra cost for utilities do portables create for like heat and electricity, water,
Electric.
electric, there's no gas?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you how much each portable uses for electricity.
Not a lot.
It's not a lot,
And then how long does the portable last? How long?
as long as you want it to.
That's a great answer.
There's a, a joke that, people that do this kind of work, that we call them permeables. Once
They're not
fixed,
temporary, is
Yeah,
that what you're telling me?
and they're good for 20-25 years, where they start showing, and depending on how they're constructed and whether or not we get one from the factory without leaks, and really, that's the biggest danger to these structures is water coming in through the roof. So it's up to us to make sure that we maintain them. We can make them last a long time.
So that's a good answer. And then can you also explain why you went with that company? It was a little bit higher of a cost and I wanted to hear your rationale.
High quality product, and they do a really good job with placement. The work that follows, connecting them to utilities, making sure that our experience has been, and I've purchased these in the past in their district, and the quality was there, but not as high as what my experience has been with Pacific Public. Their work is better, in my opinion.
That's my last question. Thank you. Who's next? Who wants to go next?
I have 2, I think. Will this increase staffing headcount?
No,
No.
You won't need additional teachers to teach in additional classrooms?
no, not right now, not next year, but what we're anticipating is that, and this aligns with the Caseload Forecast Council, which is a group, that works in Olympia with the Office of Management and Budget. They do a lot of long-term projections. We're anticipating that there will be more students in this building in the future that will necessitate an increase in staffing. We're not gonna add staffing because we've got more building. We'll add staffing.
yeah,
We have more kids.
Of course. And then the other one, I didn't see in your budget is the furniture and the technology that's gonna be needed to put in there. Is that included? Was it?
Furniture, fixtures.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Did you have a question?
I did. Do you want to go?
No, absolutely.
Okay. I just have one question. So when do you choose where they go? Sorry, I have 2 questions, actually.
No, don't take as many as you want.
You have to evaluate this, like, I'm looking at the different options, like, have you pretty much decided on A or?
Yes,
Okay, and then if A doesn't work out, then you go down the line.
we think A is going.
Okay, okay, I believe you because, yeah, okay, so I'm curious, I know that Eagle Creek got solar panels years ago. I heard from other experiences that portables, the roof angle or roof does not support solar panels. I'm just wondering the environmental impact of having a portable.
Like how much carbon? I mean, I honestly, I could not answer that question.
Yeah.
But I know that it's gonna reduce the pressure inside of the building.
Yeah. So if they wanted to in the future get another grant for more solar panels, they could not put them on the portables?
Oh, no. What I would suggest instead of doing that is putting them here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And the portables would benefit from that.
The whole site does.
Yeah, okay. That was it.
No, that's great. Those are great questions.
Yeah, I wouldn't put them on top of portable buildings. They are 2x6 construction
Right,
in the rafters, so they are pretty solid.
they can't support it,
Uh,
yeah.
but
And some additional wiring, all sorts of.
Yeah. We'd have to run, we did that, we'd have to run wiring underground back into the building to match up with because there's a meter inside of the building.
Right.
All the power has to go, all the solar generated power has to go through that meter
Mhm.
or be counted there.
Right.
Yes, and depending on the time of year, like in the summer months, electricity flows out
Right.
to the grid.
I have a quick question.
question.
good.
No, you go right ahead.
So on slide 3, it showed modern building systems had no charge under the within 250-mile radius delivery.
Mhm.
However, we're getting charged $3,960 on the Pacific Mobile Structures bid.
Mhm.
Do you know what that is for? So I'm assuming we're outside of the 250-mile radius.
We are. Yeah, that's for delivery.
Okay,
Yeah, Modern just doesn't charge us for it. That's just their business philosophy.
okay, so then are we getting both of the delivery outside the 250-mile radius and then also the 250-mile radius?
That's correct.
Both of those? Okay,
Be an additional charge.
so is that more like flat fee kind of?
The within 250 just gets it out of the 250-mile radius.
Got it.
$40 per mile until you get to 250.
It's just hooking it up to the truck, basically.
Okay.
Trucks.
Yes.
Yeah, coming to, well, yeah, this would be 4 pieces together.
Hey, Brian, can you refresh my memory? What's the current portable used for there?
There's 2 portable buildings.
Oh, there's 2, that's right.
Program.
Singles, they're singles.
There's just singles.
Yeah,
And would we anticipate them changing the use of those?
yes, if the EVD program moves into a new space,
Mhm.
we would find a new use for those portable buildings.
But not.
Okay, but not taken up, but still currently used.
Yeah, they don't move very well.
No. Well, I just didn't know.
Once you place them, they
Right.
they don't tolerate being moved very much.
And what's the overall? How are those 2 portables doing? As far as lifespan, where are they?
They're holding up.
They're holding.
Yeah. The debate really comes down to whether or not if we're required to, if we're not allowed to do isolation restraint any longer.
Right.
That's the key decision point.
Sure, okay.
And we built those isolation rooms, those portables right now, so they didn't come built like that.
Okay.
We just removed them, in preparation for another use.
Okay. And then, so and I'm sorry if I'm a little confused on the, and I fully support helping any of our schools with what we need. I was a little confused and still am with the need for the portable buildings next year as opposed to 2 or 3 years from now.
But next year, we should be somewhat stable. Like I said, we're expecting about 11 more students next year. So that would alleviate some of the pressure that's occurring in the pods. The year after that, we should be stable, but the year after that, we should be expecting more students. So, and that in combination with the construction that's occurring in the attendance areas, which drive needs now.
Right.
We would be ready.
And plus, we don't want to lose the funds. I don't know how much of the impact fees are close to the, in 3 years,
$4 million.
that they would be close to losing.
Okay.
Because after 8 years, it goes away.
We're supposed to get them back.
Yeah.
Sure.
So that's,
And then so follow up kind of to tagging on to some of the other questions here. So I guess I'm concerned. I mean, I very much value your opinion, your professionalism and everything you present. But I do question spending more money on a different building when if the other building is adequate, meets our needs. And these times it seems kind of counterproductive to do that. Is there some significant, hard data rationalization experiences from that we could base on to say that it is, qualitatively more beneficial to us to spend the extra money, or is it just something else?
So money's being spent for its intent.
Sure.
To meet growth projects. We really should have done this 2 or 3 years ago, but we didn't. Our focus was on levy projects at that
Sure.
time. We're at the point now where we provided additional space to Camp Prairie. We're at that same point right now with Eagle Creek.
And same building
I'm fine spending money. I'm not necessarily fine spending an additional $30,000 for one company versus the other. That's my, can you quantitatively? That's
No, I
right.
cannot.
There's no,
I can't point to any hard points in their proposal.
it's just been do you have recent experience with the other company that?
The year before I left Swim, so 7 years ago,
Okay. But nothing more recent than that.
no.
Okay. Yeah, I would only be in favor of this proposal should we go to the lower. I just think that's more financially prudent at this time.
I'm maintaining my position.
Understood. I appreciate it.
And it wouldn't come out of any of our capital funds, it wouldn't come out of our operation. It's all paid for by impact fees.
And state timber money.
Nothing's coming out of our regular budget.
Out of the general fund?
Right,
Right, it's a
No,
capital.
it's all capital.
5 different things.
I guess to bounce off of that, like, would it come at a cost to another school? Or I think that's also part of the worry, right? Is being responsible. So
We're
would the
spending
30,000
extra
go,
$30,000.
could it be used? I think that's maybe another question. Is could it be, like, is another school gonna,
Could buy an aluminum ramp for SBLC and
Yeah.
replace a wood one
right?
with that $30,000.
Well, could you? I don't know.
So
That's,
Well, you just said that 20 to 40.
I can't give you hard numbers right now,
Understood.
but we're almost at the end of our levy program. And there will be additional money remaining. When we're all done spending money on projects that we told the voters that we would do. And it's gonna be pretty substantial. So 30,000, and I don't want to sound insensitive. It's small potatoes in comparison to the remaining funds. We've got the capacity to purchase aluminum ramps at SVLC. Just haven't come up on the radar yet. And we do have wooden ramps there. We got 11 buildings. It's gonna be $250,000, right, to equip all of those with ramps. So, I don't want, and we haven't planned it, but we could, bring it to you after we're done with the projects at Kent Prairie and Westland and Eagle Creek. Like I said, I don't try to sound insensitive or fiscally green. I think we're gonna get a better project out of Pacific Normal than we could water. Primarily because of the proximity of the work we've done with them in the past on this kind of project. Sure.
thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I just, yeah.
Yes,
When you
ma'am.
say the classrooms are strained, I'm assuming you mean overpopulated with students.
It's the spaces outside of the classrooms that are really feeling the pressure.
Oh.
Pull out space. If you go into the pods, they're full of instructional stations. And it would be better for us to have, it would be better for the students if we had a space that was less distracting. Okay, so you could create additional space with this proposal.
Thank you.
so there's no actual classrooms being in the hallways, they're just like reading groups or math or small group things. Okay. It's very loud, I've been in the hall before,
Yeah.
when every class has a group in the hall and.
But again, we're not gonna dictate the building's administration's decision on the program.
Right.
It gives them that opportunity to change where they're providing instruction by having these additional spaces. Now, and again, they choose with the ED programs into those rooms as well.
Brian, I have a question, a long distance relative here. How much square feet, I'm sorry, again, with the portable, so they're back to back, so you have two rooms per whatever there's called these per building, and then you're doing 2 buildings. So are we essentially getting like 4 rooms?
Yes, it's 3,300 square feet.
per room?
No, total.
Total per unit, essentially. Okay, that's pretty sizable.
850
That's pretty-
square feet per room.
Yeah. And just to give some context, the building I work in over at Lakewood, we have 3 first grades, and across from that are 3 kindergartens, and we do have a pod. And it's a very good sized pod, and it is essential because, just like Mary indicated, we do small groups, we do some lap in there, we do some behavioral management sometimes in that pod. It's an important space. So if the administration and teachers are finding that that space being cramped, that will add to the challenges that teachers face. And I personally would support the educational process and allowing a little bit more real estate for them to do their jobs. So, and I live near Eagle Creek, and I think where you're proposing makes perfect sense. I walk around it, and that also would be my question of how do we, I would say contain, but how do we provide that level of safety? And I'm seeing your markings for the fencing, and that makes a lot of sense as well. So thank you for presenting this information.
Sure.
Thank you, Sherry. I'm sorry I forgot to call on you. Does anybody else have any follow-up questions? This is an action item. Do we need to discuss it any further? Are we ready to make a motion?
I make a motion.
I heard Sherry make a motion that the board approves the issuance of a purchase order to Pacific Mobile. Yes. Did you hear Sherry?
Yes, I did say I make a motion that we approve the purchase order.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the issuance of a purchase order to Pacific Mobile to purchase 2 portable classroom buildings for installation at Eagle Creek. Madam Clerk.
Director Ray,
Nay.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Kingman,
Aye.
President Levesque,
Aye.
Director Knapp.
Aye. Motion is approved. Thank you, Brian, for your very informative presentation with all the details. Next up, we'll have our first reading of board policies 2401, financial education mastery, basic learning and credit. And 2411, certificate of educational competency, and 3117, students in or released from an institutional education facility. And this will be presented by Carrie Henderson Burke, our Executive Director of Teaching and Learning. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much, President Levesque. All right, let's start off with new policy. That was, I don't know what that was. but-
Just arm rest.
Okay,
No worries.
okay, it's not like weather blowing in. Okay, policy 2401 adds to our series of policies that allow students to gain credit for that which they already know. They can gain credit potentially for not seat time, but other experiences, other learnings, and other opportunities that may have happened outside of school, this time in the realm of financial education. So the wording is similar to our other masters.
This is financial education they're getting outside the district.
They could gain it in a lot of ways,
Okay.
yes, more outside of the classroom itself.
Oh, there you go.
Yes.
Thank you.
Carrie, how will they show what they know?
Which will come out when this is the policy, the procedure will describe the options. The other policies that we have, the other procedures that we have that accompany mastery-based learning is tend to be, there's like an end of course exam, there's an oral exam, there's usually a portfolio opportunity. Depending on the content area, a student also might be able to write an essay. So a variety of ways to show what they know. We would want the student to be able to find the way that works best for him or her. And that also works with the way the staff would be able to assess that knowledge.
Is this things like how to balance a checkbook or how to invest in the stock market or all of the above?
It's a wide range of financial literacy really for kids after they leave school. Right now, the two classes that would be sort of responsible for managing the assessment side of this would be like business math and CTE, or modeling our world with mathematics are the two courses.
Director Kelly, do you have any questions?
Hold on, gotta find myself. Nothing specific. Is this is an existing policy, is that correct, or is this brand new?
It's a new policy.
This is brand new. Okay. Yeah, I think that's great. I wish I'd had this incumbent upon me when I was in high school. I think that would have been a nice segue into the real world. So yeah, I think it sounds great. Oh, and I will ask this question. Does it something that we start in 9th grade? Is there an age that this is introduced a little bit each year, or is it just it's sometime during the high school?
A good question. Since it's not bound by seat time in a classroom, at any point, a student at any point in high school could go through the assessment process.
Okay.
The two courses that are that house financial literacy right now are 11th and 12th grade classrooms. So
Gotcha. Great. Thank you.
Is there like a choice board, or do they just kind of send them out in the world? Tell them to seek their own learning. Like you said, there's a lot of options, right? So, but
to show mastery,
yeah,
to prove their mastery of the
Yeah.
topic. There's no set way that kids could learn it.
okay,
But the way that we do have a kind of a pre-approved list of the ways that they would show. what
okay.
they know. Yeah.
So when we say that we give credit for it, it's, well, I'm assuming we're just doing class credit. Would it be like a semester or like a full year?
It would depend on the duration of the math class that it would be used for. So third level math, probably a full credit, but.
Okay,
it would
and
depend.
then,
We could also award partial credit for partial mastery. 5 to 1 credit could be awarded if we stick with the same procedure on our same wording on the procedure that we have on our other mastery-based credit
okay,
procedures.
and then is there like a specific set of classes that this would apply to, or is that more of like a procedure thing?
For right now, it's the two classes that would, you could get credit in either modeling our world with mathematics or the business math. That's where, yeah, into that third year one credit.
All right, and then one final question, is this like the start of a trend? Are we gonna be doing this for other subjects or?
There are all math, science, social studies, PE, there's English, there's a whole slew of them. So this is adding to options for me.
Awesome, thank you very much.
One more thing. I think I'm like gathering that maybe it's increasing accessibility to like show what you know. Would that be a correct assumption?
Yeah, it's not directly tied to UDL in principle. It's intended to open the doors to give kids, right? With the 24 credits, it's such a tight timeline. And there are so many impacts that students experience that might not allow them to attain 24 credits in a typical 4 year. So it's a way to acknowledge that kids have funds of knowledge that they walk in the door with or that they've gathered elsewhere. So it's not UDL in the sense that they get to, here's my list of choices. It's more about, yeah, equity and access.
Perfect. Yeah, that's the way it appears. So great.
Dr. White, do you have any questions, or does
0 questions.
anybody have any recommended changes, amendments to this policy? Do you want to let us see the next one?
Yes, absolutely. I put my glasses back on for me to see the next one, but all right, so this is an update to an existing policy on a certificate of educational competency. So, significantly changed in terms of, I think the spirit of this is still essentially the same as the former wording. But we've got some terminology change from high school or from certificate of competency to high school equivalency certificate. The outcome is probably the same. The wording is just updated on the title of the certificate that the kids would receive. It also adds some more specificity about how, who's eligible to participate in this and why. And the policy also spells out a process for how we approve who might be approved to be released from a typical four-year experience and take this route. So it spells out our responsibilities as a district to ensure that we're monitoring carefully.
So how does that certificate differ from a GED and a diploma? In job applications or college acceptance, what's the
It
benefit
should be treated the same way.
as a GED or a diploma?
Carries the same way.
Student advisor, sure, do you have any questions or
Sorry.
recommendations?
So it talks about under the determination of substantial and warranted reason for leaving the regular high school program, in that little section. Speaks about like what happens if somebody between 16 and 19 was to leave like the regular high school program. Would they be able to get kind of I don't want to say diploma, but the test it was talked about?
They would go through a GED kind of process.
Okay, and then is that age restriction doesn't apply? They don't have to be 19 or over for that? If they were, so. I think I worded it wrong. So they get to they have a warranted reason for leaving the high school program and say you're like 16. But you want to apply to a job that requires a GED or something. But it speaks above about how you have to be 19 or over. Would they be able to get a GED at that age? Do you know?
At 16,
Yes.
you could if you could prove mastery of content. Yeah,
Good
so
call.
there's still a testing kind of process
Right.
to go through to show that you mastered the content.
Thank you.
Good question. Any further questions? Director Kelly,
No questions for me. Thank you.
anybody have any suggestions for improvement? Right, want to show us the next one?
All right. Third and final new policy for the night, 3117. So this is ensuring that we support students who might have been served in an educational facility, an institutional facility. Outlines our responsibilities to ensure that we capture previous learning and credits to the maximum extent possible. Or in the event that a student comes to us from perhaps a different state as a junior or senior and does not have time in a traditional four-year timeline to attain 24 credits according to Washington State, it directs us to work with their sending district to do what we can to waive credits or, to offer competency-based kinds of credits for kids so that we can do everything in our power to ensure that the student is not penalized for having been served in a facility or coming from a different state with different grant requirements.
And that happens, right?
Yes, on occasion it does.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you explain what an institutional education facility is and where and how that impacts kids?
It could be, and it could be a juvenile kind of facility for adjudicated youth, or it could also be, we have some students who leave our district to go receive services in a different kind of facility where there might be, greater measures for safety or security too.
Any more questions? Any possible amendments to this policy? Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we'll have our second reading and adoption of board policy 6512 infection control program. Oh, I skipped one. 1250 student advisors. This is a really important one for you, Kyle. To the board of directors, and this will be them, my Dr. Sweet.
This is the second reading. There were no suggested changes from the first reading. And it's just revising some language to clarify how valuable our student advisors to the board are. And just also clarifying that we would see in particular is added, providing advisory votes when appropriate. And just add a few words, that's it.
So do you have any opinions on this,
I think-
student advisor?
I think it's great. Yeah, the word changes look great to me, and providing an advisory vote sounds fun. It's very official. So I don't have any questions. It just seems great all around.
Anybody else have any comments or suggestions to improve this policy? This one is an action item. Do we have a motion? Make a motion, we approve policy 1250.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve board policy 1250, student advisors to the board of directors. Madam Clerk. Director Ray.
Aye.
Director Kelly.
Aye.
Director Kingman.
Aye.
President Levesque. Aye. Director Knapp. Aye. Thank you. Aye. And next up is the second reading and adoption of board policy 6512, infection control program. Dr. Sudi.
Yes, this is the second reading and there are no other comments since first reading, and really this is minor, but the most important piece to this is the last sentence of the last section where it talks that we will follow the lawful regulations and orders as required during, and this is a result of like the pandemic. You know, and there used to be more specificity in this language, but as that's changed, so this is more global, which just says we'll follow what's required of us.
Do that, discuss cleanup? Like spill kits,
We have that in a different.
that's a
policy.
different policy.
This is relationship to staff and what's required of staff. I think it's in the 500 series, and it's it used to say here about the vaccinations being required, but then that's, you know, not required anymore for COVID, you know, as part, or getting an exemption. So required or having an approved exemption.
So when things change, we don't have to change our policy.
Right.
Because it just says we will
Right.
follow what's required.
Right, exactly.
As Kyle said, it's good to follow the law.
I think that was Mariska.
Oh, yeah, sounds like a good idea or something, yeah. All right, this is also an action item.
Make a motion, we approve policy 6512.
A second.
Oh, thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve 6512 infection control program. Madam Clerk. Director Wright,
Nay.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Kingman,
Aye.
President Levesque. Aye. Director Knapp. Aye. All right, that concludes the new business part of our meeting. Next, we have our informational item, Dr. Sweeting.
So yesterday, a group of us went to the legislative conference in Olympia, and it was a good day to be learning and listening to what the legislative hot topics were. And it was very clear that there are two. Well, there are more than that, but the ones that stood out the most were funding for special education, that the state is not fully funding special education, and that it is the paramount duty of the state. The Constitution doesn't say anywhere else that something is paramount except for public education and funding that. And so it was very clear that having a cap, as I mentioned already earlier in the board meeting, is it's not right. And Chris Reichfeld, the superintendent, the state superintendent, said it very clearly yesterday. That's almost a violation of civil rights, or, you know, it's a violation. So we are going to continue to advocate that public education is fully funded for all kids, not just some. And the other one is transportation, that the way that our system is in how we calculate transportation for students, especially those that have special transportation, is not okay either. But it was a good day to be with others and listening. And, thank goodness we didn't start too much, but it was a long Sunday, but it was still good. So, and then the other thing is, and Gina already mentioned it, but the budget forum, the community budget forum is tomorrow night at Post. And we're looking forward to have community and staff and anybody that would like to come to hear more and tell us what their priorities are when it comes to the budget, and give us some ideas. So that's what I have.
Thank you. Next up is our legislative update and discussion. Director Kelly.
It was a very productive couple days. Really enjoyed yesterday's sort of convention, if you will, at the community college there in Olympia. Today was equally, if not more productive. I had 2 meetings lined up with legislators. The first was with Ron Muzal from Oak Harbor. And, just realizing the newness of this and what this looked like. I think several of us were not really knowing what to expect. Very nice gentleman, has been as a senator for some time. And we had 2 student reps who articulated the transportation as well as the special needs issues. I think they did a great job at presenting that. It was a room of us, so it was pretty much like the board of Whidbey, South Whidbey. We had Stanwood Camino, Lopez Island, the gentleman from Darrington, and then myself and McKenna from Arlington. So it was a packed room. It went very quickly. The 2 representatives really, as I said, spoke to those issues for us, which I thought was perfect, getting student voice. I would say that Senator Muzal heard that. I'm not sure where the needle will move on that. He did kind of give us some updates on just general overview of where things are in the legislature. So I can't say I walked out of that particular meeting terribly hopeful that, that we'll get it where we want it to be, but it was good having that conversation. And I look forward to reaching out more to the senators and reps in the future. Obviously, now is not the time to invite them to our district, but that would be something I would be interested in doing. Today was also very effective, though. We had that one meeting. Our second meeting with Dave Paul ended up being canceled, which worked out okay because we had a impromptu meeting with Clyde Shavers in the hallway and talked for almost 20 or 25 minutes. I think he's a rock star, but I'm biased because we campaigned for him this summer. But there are many things he's looking at doing that he is on the vice chair of the education committee, and he's working in tandem with Representative Santos, which we saw. She's also been at the helm of this for quite some time. He did share with me that he has a bill that's coming to the floor this week that looks at giving students credit for working outside of school. So I think that is definitely an eye opener, and we'll be following that, and we'll give you an update on that. But anyway, yeah, we bumped into several other legislators from around this area, so that was great. But it was exciting to be a part of it. It was very action oriented, and I think it was very important to be with other school districts and their directors with the interest of impact and expressing our very our need and our desire to move at least these 2 issues forward on some level. So I think they got the message today, and it was great to see all the people in attendance, especially since things have not been in person for some time. I think that was a nice refresh to experience that. So I appreciated the opportunity to go down, and I look forward to doing it again.
Thank you. Thank you for that report. Thank you for representing us down at Olympia. Next up is our comments from board members. Student advisor, do you want to share anything?
I don't really have anything to share at the moment. We have play coming up, but we have a meeting before it, so more on that later, I suppose. And then senior night is also coming up, but it's also after the next meeting. So for now, that's it.
Thank you. Director Dan, would you like to share anything?
Not much. I'll be there tomorrow at the community budget forum, and before we didn't have a meeting last week, so the Friday before that, it was so awesome to spend time with the students at Post Middle School. It just really felt, very honest in their conversation, and I just truly appreciate that. So good job, Post students. Oh, and their masking tape art in the hallway, like it was incredible.
I'm gonna put that in the update too, the panda, the picture.
Yeah.
There in the tape.
Very good. Thank you for sharing. Director Ray, do you have any additional comments?
Excited for the basketball teams to go to state. That's gonna be great.
Go Eagles.
Absolutely. That's it. Good games.
I have nothing.
Oh, nice. Director Kelly, do you have any other additional comment?
Nope, just had a really great day today, and I felt very at home being at the Capitol. So I know my daughter appreciated the opportunity to spend that time with me as well. It was a good day overall. So thank you.
So I did bring back the program and the hot topic, and if anybody wants to look at these, well, I could pass them around, but we're leaving in a minute. And then I wanted to say I'm going to the budget forum tomorrow at Post also, looking forward to that. And then our next meeting will be, wait, 2 more meetings coming up soon. We have Monday, March 6th is our special board meeting study session, and that's at 5 p.m. Here at this building. And then our next regular board meeting is Monday, March 13th at 6 p.m. right here in this room. So with that, do we have any motions to adjourn? Anyone?
Make the motion, we adjourn.
Second.
I second.
Who's second to adjourn?
Third.
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Kingman.
Aye.
President Levesque. Aye. Director Nat. Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Have a good drive safe. And are we hoping for snow, Brian?
No, holding.
Are we hoping?